thousands of women who have tried everything. They've tried birth control, they've tried changing their lifestyle, like nothing worked, and then seed cycling helped them. And I see so many, especially unfortunately, a lot of men say, oh, seed cycling is bull crap. You don't need to do it. And it's like, that is just a slap in the face to all the women whose lives have genuinely changed.
Hello and welcome to the Biohackher Podcast. I'm Azra Alagich, your host and founder of Biohackher. I'm an integrated nutrition health coach specializing in longevity for women, a health and wellness journalist, writer, corporate consultant, and a biohacking advocate. Biohackher is a space where we can explore ways to optimize our health to live well longer. Whether it's through improving our nutrition, exercising, cryotherapy, supplementation, technology, and more, I'll be bringing you information and interviews with the best longevity experts to help you understand what you can do to optimize your health, prevent disease, and slow down or even reverse the symptoms of aging by taking control of your unique bio-individuality. Want to know more? Let's dive in. Kaya, welcome to the Biohacker Podcast. Every expert has a story. What first sparked your passion for women's hormonal health?
Well, I have always had a fascination with the menstrual cycle. Even when I was a teenage girl, I clocked pretty immediately that how I felt and my relationship to certain things would change week to week. So I didn't understand, for example, like, oh, I'm in my luteal phase. That's why I feel this way. But I just knew a few days leading up to my period, I feel differently, or maybe I feel more anxious, or I feel rejection harder. And simultaneously, I come from a South Asian background. And in my culture and amongst my friend groups and my family, so many of the girls that I knew were struggling with things like PMOS, which was formerly PCOS, or things like irregular cycles or debilitating cycles or cramps so bad that they had to take birth control or medication. And I remember thinking, this is so common, but it's not normal. Like, why should women be feeling this way, especially young teenage girls be feeling like they can't go to school because their cycle is so bad, or they have to skip parties or events, or they're just crying on the couch. And as I got older, I became a health coach and then I got my master's in nutrition. And I just wanted to collect tools for women to not feel this way every single month, because I just very much knew that this should not be the experience of women. Unfortunately, it is the experience for a lot of women.
Yeah, it certainly is. I've heard it so many times, and even my own daughter experiences, severe period cramps as well prior to her period every month. It just seems to be so commonplace. Yet so many women accept it. What are your thoughts on why women accept it?
I think it's that thing that it's just become so common that it's almost normalized. And I also think that unfortunately, it's changing now, but a lot of women will go to, I've heard the story, I've not experienced it myself, that they go to their physician and they say, well, welcome to being a woman. You're going to get period cramps. It's not a big deal. Like, just take Advil, or maybe we'll put you on birth control and we'll cover it up. Or the experience of my co-founder who had such bad periods that she was put on birth control for about 14 years. And when she came off of it, everything that she experienced prior to going on it came back tenfold. And so she had really bad hormonal acne and really bad cramps and just didn't want to leave the house. And so unfortunately, a lot of doctors are not even trained into what to do. I remember I actually saw this thing on Instagram the other day that said, oh, why did we all learn about boys having wet dreams or people learn about erectile dysfunction? Meanwhile, we don't hear anything about women's cycles and why they're experiencing certain things in school. And it's just so true. It's not talked about. And I don't know how it is over there, but over here, periods are still taboo, right? Like, you don't talk about your period, hide that you're on your period. It's definitely changing, but I think that the combination of all these things have made it so that just women don't seek out help when they need it.
I think here in Australia, it's probably not as taboo as what it used to be. Certainly some years ago, but certainly when I was younger, that was certainly the case. But I think we're starting to become a little bit more open about women's bodies and about the importance of talking about women's health. And it feels like that we're finally starting to have more open conversations about women's health. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, it's been so amazing to see, especially in the past 5 years, the conversations around women's health or different experts who talk about perimenopause, that has blown up in the past 5 years. I will say I saw a statistic the other day that more than half of med students are now women. And I think that the more that women start to occupy certain spaces, the more they realize, hey, my voice is not present here, and I want to be contributing to this conversation. And it's okay to learn about your health from a man. That's totally fine, but they cannot always speak to the individual experiences of women. And I think women are just showing up in more spaces that they previously were not invited to, or just were not, there were not a lot of them there. And I love to see it. I love to see all these powerful women show up, talk about all the things that women go to, and talk about what's unique to women.
Absolutely. And it is so unique to every single individual. Every single woman will have a slightly different experience with her period or with going through perimenopause or menopause. So, do you think that there's more room for growth in this space and that we're only just starting to get on top of it?
Absolutely. I think I saw that they only started to use actual menstrual blood to test menstrual products like, I don't know, less than 15 years ago or something. That's wild to me, right? Like there's so much room for growth here, but I do see it accelerating quite quickly, which is really nice.
So, walk us through your own personal experience. How did you tackle what you were experiencing with your periods and what brought you to seed cycling?
Yeah, so for me personally, I was fortunate that I didn't have really debilitating cramps. My challenge that I didn't recognize immediately until I started to track my cycle was that I would have really bad mood swings. I would get very anxious or very sad leading up to my cycle. And I just didn't understand why until I really started to say, okay, this is happening around day 21. Okay, what's going on in the cycle at that point? And especially postpartum, postpartum, my periods, they really changed. They got heavier. The mood challenges got a little bit worse. Really, it was my wanting to help the women around me who were going through these more debilitating sort of cramps and stuff that brought me to this. So how I learned about seed cycling is actually really interesting. I had heard about it in the circles that I was in, especially in LA. In LA, everybody's trying different things. They're into Ayurvedic medicine or Chinese medicine and lots of different biohacking and stuff like that. And I kind of thought it sounded a little bit funny, to be honest. I was very skeptical. But then when I was getting my master's in nutrition, we had a visiting professor and she was doing a lecture on PMS. And she said, there's a practice that she recommends called seed cycling. And when women follow it for 3 to 6 months consistently, she sees a 90% success rate. And this is for women who have irregular cycles or really bad menstrual cramps, hormonal acne, just all of the things that encompass, women who have bad periods. And I was like, a 90% success rate. Like, I need to know what this is. I want to give it to my friends who are struggling, especially, I know a lot of women who they tried birth control, it didn't work for them, or they had adverse effects, or they feel like they're eating really well and that's not working, or they're exercising. They think they're doing everything right and nothing is moving the needle forward with their cycles. So when I heard about this, I was talking to my co founder at the time, who again had gotten off of birth control and was really struggling. Her functional medicine doctor recommended it to her. So we talked about it. I said, listen, my professor said that could be potentially life changing. You should do it. She did it. And within 1 month, pretty much most of her symptoms went away. Within 2 months, they all went away. And so at that point, seed cycling it's a lot of work. So we thought to ourselves, okay, this works. How can we make it available to women in a really accessible way? Because we want women to have this tool, but it's just not realistic for most women to do it on their own.
It has become more popular, but also quite controversial. And I think that's the case with anything in the biohacking space or anything that new that's coming through. Why do you think it does generate such strong opinions?
I completely understand the controversy because, again, like I said, I was skeptical. This idea that you eat specific seeds throughout the month and that somehow balances your hormones, it kind of sounds like witchcraft. Honestly, I get it. But I think once you get into the nitty gritty of what's actually happening, it's really easy to understand, okay, I get why this works. And also, not only the science behind it, but then also the experience of thousands of women who have done it and now no longer have to take 8 Advil a day because their menstrual pain is so bad, or women who have not been ovulating for years who start ovulating again, We actually even get text messages from husbands who say, "Oh my gosh, my wife is back. She doesn't hate me 1 week before her period every month." And so I think that anytime that somebody says something is a cure all, there's controversy around it. And I want to just clear up that this is not a cure all. This is not a magic bullet solution. However, at times it is presented that way. Oh, if you want to balance your hormones, start seed cycling and everything will be okay. And that's just not the truth. This is one helpful tool that has been life changing for a lot of women, but it is not a magic bullet solution.
I think for someone hearing the term for the first time, they might not know what this is. What is this mystery thing called seed cycling? Walk
Yeah.
us through what it actually is and how it works.
So I will preface by saying I'm going to talk about it in relationship to a menstrual cycle. However, you do not have to necessarily have a menstrual cycle to be seed cycling or a regular cycle to be seed cycling. We have women in perimenopause who do it. We have women in menopause and beyond who also do it. But just to simplify things, I'm going to talk about it within this 28-day menstrual cycle, which is the average length of a menstrual cycle. So, for the first 2 weeks of your menstrual cycle, you're in your menstrual and your follicular phase. And then the last 2 weeks is your luteal phase. Somewhere in between there, you ovulate. So, what happens in the first half of your cycle? Estrogen is rising. And then the second half of your cycle, progesterone is rising. So, what seed cycling is you eat specific seeds in relationship to where you're at in your cycle to support what's going on hormonally at that stage. So the first 2 weeks, you take 1 tablespoon of ground flaxseed and 1 tablespoon of ground pumpkin seed every single day. Then around day 15, you switch to 1 tablespoon of sesame seeds and 1 tablespoon of sunflower seeds, both ground as well. And you kind of go on that rotation. Every 2 weeks, you switch basically that set of seeds. And essentially, what these seeds are doing is they are not only supporting the production of these hormones, but they're also supporting the metabolism and elimination of these hormones and the relationship between these hormones. Because what we often see is too much estrogen in relationship to progesterone, right? So you don't have enough progesterone to counterbalance all this estrogen. And that's when you start to see some of those symptoms of estrogen dominance, like the heavy cycles, the weight gain around the hips and the thighs, the hormonal acne, the debilitating cramps. So think about there's the seeds, but actually what we're focused on is the nutrients in the seeds. So there's things like lignans, polyphenols, antioxidants, fiber, protein, vitamins, minerals. Those things are the things that are supporting the hormones. And I think when you think about the nutrients versus the seeds, it makes way more sense and it feels a little bit less like witchcrafty.
And what about for women going through perimenopause or menopause? You mentioned that they can also seed cycle. Why would they be seed cycling if they don't have a cycle anymore?
So for perimenopause, we've actually seen the best results. I actually think seed cycle is best suited for women in perimenopause, and we see the most positive feedback because this is when the cycle starts to become a little bit irregular, right? Women start to say, "Oh, my cycle was every 28 days. Now it's every 14 days, or now it's every 32 days, and I just don't know when it's coming." And so often women who seed cycle, who are in perimenopause, will start to see more regulation of their cycle. So they'll say, like, "Oh, for a few months, my cycle, I just didn't know when it was going to come. And now I'm back to a 26-day cycle or a 30-day cycle or a 28-day cycle." So they get more regularity. And the longer we can keep that cycle regular, the better, right? And so also a lot of women at this stage are starting to experience things like low libido. I mean, we get messages of women saying, "Oh my God, my libido is back. I didn't ever think that I was going to feel like sexual desire again for my husband. And all of a sudden now I feel the way that I felt when I was in my 20s." For women in menopause, they don't necessarily need to cycle the same way. They can, right? They can do the two different phases. But even if they just stuck with phase one, which is flaxseed and pumpkin seeds, that would be beneficial because flax seeds have lignans, which kind of have this estrogen modulating sort of effect. So the research actually shows when it comes to these lignans, they're like weak phytoestrogens. So they can potentially block harmful estrogen in the body, or they can support low estrogen states potentially. So in menopause, we have a lot of women who do both. But again, if you're doing it on your own, you can just do flax or pumpkin.
And what sort of results are women reporting back to you after having started seed cycling? How's it addressing the symptoms?
Again, we've seen some pretty amazing things. I mean, the stories that always stick out to me because I'm very interested in fertility are women who are not ovulating for many years, right? So even if you don't want to get pregnant, knowing if you can ovulate is very important. We often think of like the period as the main event of the menstrual cycle, but it's really ovulation that's the main event. And the reason we want to know if we're ovulating is because that is how you produce progesterone. If you're not ovulating, you're not getting progesterone. And if you're not getting progesterone, then you have nothing to counterbalance the estrogen. And that's when you start to see some of those symptoms. So I think anytime we can get women ovulating who do want to get pregnant, that's very exciting because we hear, I've been seed cycling for 6 months. I started ovulating and now I'm pregnant. And that just warms my heart. I really love hearing that story. I struggled with hormonal acne. The women who are like, I don't have hormonal acne anymore. That's always nice because sometimes it's those vanity things that really get to people that make them take a deeper look into their health. Again, the story of the woman who was taking 8 Advil a day during her period because her cramps were so bad, no longer having to take Advil anymore. Or women who they just didn't know when their cycle was coming, and then now they have a more regular cycle, which is also really exciting. I mean, we've heard everything. We've heard people sleeping better. We've heard the mood stuff. We've heard more energy, less bloating. It's really incredible what we've seen.
So if someone tried seed cycling for a month, say, I think that's how long they need to be on it for. Is that right?
We typically recommend at least 3 to 6 months to start
Okay.
to see positive changes because you want your cycle to, go fully for you to start to see what's going on.
Mm. And if they do that and it doesn't work for them, if they come back to you and say, "Look, this hasn't worked for me," what's your response to that? Is there a reason as to why it wouldn't be working? Or
Yeah, absolutely. So again, seed cycling is not a magic bullet and it's not a band-aid solution. So when I say it's not a magic bullet, it definitely needs to be done within the context of an overall healthy lifestyle. And what I mean by that is, are you moving? Are you sleeping? Are you managing stress? Are you eating a diet that's low in ultra processed foods? If you're not doing all those things, for the most part, perfectionism is not something I believe in. But if you're not doing those things for the most part, seed cycling is not, it's not going to help you fully. It could help a little bit, but then also it's not a band-aid solution. So when it comes to any changes in lifestyle, whether you're focusing on nutrition or let's say you want to lose weight and you're modifying your calories or you're trying to sleep more or you're trying to whatever it is, lifestyle changes take a little bit longer. And seed cycling is a food-based solution. So it's not going to be like a medication, which could potentially just work overnight by covering up your symptoms. This could take time and it's food, it's nutrients. So even if you're not seeing what you want to be seeing right away, know that the nutrients are working quietly in the background on not just your reproductive health, but also your gut health, your brain health, your heart health, your blood sugar, your skin, virtually every system in your body. You're doing something good for yourself, regardless of whether or not that specific symptom is being targeted. So just keep it up because it's basically a good habit.
I've lost count how many times I've heard women complain about their menstrual cycle. It just seems to be so commonplace, doesn't it? But what do you think it says about a woman's overall health?
Yeah, our menstrual cycle is not just a monthly inconvenience. They say it's a report card, or I say it's valuable information. In fact, even now they say it's another vital sign. And the reason that it's so important is because it is not siloed or isolated again to our reproductive organs. Your brain, your adrenals, your thyroid all impact your menstrual cycle. So if something is off with your period, that's not just, okay, something's off with my ovaries or something's off with my reproductive organs. No, it could be a total body situation. It could be your thyroid. There could be some signal missing from your brain to your reproductive organs. Something could be going on with your gut health. Take the instance of estrogen dominance, for example. Okay, what does estrogen need to be eliminated? Your gut and your liver. Is something going on with your gut and your liver? Are you constipated, right? So it's like, all of this information that you get from your period is so, so valuable. And I want women to pay attention to that. Oh my gosh, I love getting my period. Every month that it comes, I am so excited because I'm like, okay, this is a sign. Things are going well. Things are, first of all, there's the aspect of like, I'm not in my luteal phase anymore, which can be challenging. But then there's also the information of like, hey, it's 6 days, it's regular. Okay, this is information that men do not get, by the way. So I consider it to be a superpower for women.
I completely agree, and I think it's something that really should be honoured rather than something that should be dreaded, because a lot of women
Absolutely.
do tend to dread it, probably because of the symptoms that they experience, whether it's the pain or the mood swings or whatever it might be. I do think that women sometimes are feeling quite disconnected from their bodies these days. And I wonder whether it's because, we've got the classic, cliche of the rushing women syndrome, or with it just so focused on caring and nurturing for others. How do you think we can start to become more in tune with our bodies and what our bodies are telling us?
Yeah, it's a good question. I unfortunately think there are so many beautiful things about social media, and the unfortunate side of it is that we're getting, especially as women, so much different conflicting information from experts or professionals who think that they have the right information for women to follow. And I will say that anything that feels a full body no should be honored. So if somebody's telling you, "Hey, you need to follow this particular diet or you need to do this particular thing," and you feel like that doesn't feel right, that feels really restrictive. Okay, that seems dreadful. I mean, honor those feelings because anything that is actually genuinely healthy for you and for your body is going to feel intuitive almost. It's going to feel like, yeah, that actually feels right. That makes a lot of sense. And there's so much, gosh, there is so much noise in social media. There's so much noise and there's so many people claiming to have the perfect solution. I mean, if there's somebody online who is telling you to avoid entire groups of food, please just run the other way because yes, that is necessary at times, right? We need elimination diets. You might have a histamine problem or you might need to figure out what your food intolerance is. That is for sure the case, but that is not general advice. That kind of thing where people are saying, "Oh, you have to eliminate all lectins from your diet. You have to eliminate all this from your diet." Oh, it makes me so sad because people are already so confused. And then you're just adding more confusion to the mix.
Yes, I agree. We need to understand that we have a unique bio-individuality, that whatever we're doing with our bodies, we need to ensure that it's very personalized for us and that we're listening to what our bodies are telling us and how we're reacting to what we might be taking or consuming or doing to our bodies even as well, because quite often doing exercises, for example, might have a negative reaction depending on where you're at with your life and where you're at with your health and your hormones and so on. I think we're often too quick to blame hormones for everything as well. Do you think that they've been underestimated for too long though?
Hormones has become such a hot button word over the past few years, and I think it's because it gets grouped into something, right? It's either like you think of hormone replacement therapy, or you think of menopause, or you think of puberty. It's like it kind of has this stigma around it. But hormones to me are actually such a beautiful thing, and I heard somebody to explain it this way, which I loved. I loved this analogy. They said, think of your hormones like an orchestra. Each hormone is playing an instrument and it produces a symphony. And if one of those instruments is out of tune, then the entire symphony sounds like shit. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love that analogy because it's true. When we think of hormones, sometimes we think, oh, just testosterone or estrogen or progesterone. No, there's so many hormones. Think of your cortisol, right? Cortisol gets a bad rep, but cortisol gives you motivation. You need cortisol, it protects your immunity. Or think of insulin, which helps with your blood sugar. I mean, there are these powerful chemical messengers that I think honestly should be celebrated. And instead, they've kind of been talked about in a way that just like puts them into one box or another. So I am all about the celebration of hormones and what they do for our bodies. And I welcome the conversation.
What's one thing about women's hormones that you think many health professionals are still getting wrong?
I was chatting with someone that I know who is a medical professional in a conventional setting recently, and she was saying, I'm so tired of all these women coming into my office and saying, I think I'm in perimenopause, I need HRT, and this is what I'm. She's like, everybody thinks they're in perimenopause. And it made me a little bit sad because I think there's still a lot of discrediting women's individual experiences happening. And I wish, I come from a functional medicine background. I know a lot of naturopaths and integrative doctors. And I wish that both sides could honor each other's strengths and honor each other's weaknesses. And I wish if they worked together, that would be so harmonious and wonderful for me. But instead, there's so much vitriol between these two different groups of people. And, to hear someone say like that they're just discrediting all these women because they're just learning something online. It's like, no, these women are actually going through things. They actually don't feel well. And they're coming to you with a hypothesis. And I think it's the job of the professional in that situation to say, hey, maybe I don't think it's that, but I can help you investigate to see what is actually going on. But instead, things are really written off. And especially for women, right? We get written off so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think women are going to social media because they're not getting answers from
Yeah.
their medical practitioners. They're not feeling heard, they're not feeling seen, they're not feeling understood. They're often just prescribed medication to address pain, which is just band aiding the problem rather than identifying the root cause. So, no wonder women are turning elsewhere. I know I did that
Yeah.
when I had
Yeah.
my own health issues. I think a lot of
Oh,
women are
yeah.
doing that now.
Absolutely. It's like they wanna be their own advocate. And I also know that everyone's a human being and they're doing their best, and people are only presenting the information that they know about, right? So we can't expect doctors to know everything, especially if they weren't trained in it. But I do think that there could be less just demonizing of the other side, basically.
Yeah, and certainly if they don't know or haven't been trained in it, they can provide a recommendation or referral to someone
Exactly.
else that could support them, right? Food is one of your biggest passions. Is there any food that deserves more attention when it comes to women's health, do you think?
I love the conversation around nutrition and food, and that is my biggest passion. I would say right now, the food that I am really paying attention to is sulforaphane, or what sulforaphane comes from, which is things like broccoli sprouts or broccoli. And this is a compound, an antioxidant that has been shown to support detoxification, protect our DNA, and fight free radicals. And so, especially women who are struggling with hormonal imbalances, I mean, if you want support eliminating estrogen, right? This could be a powerful thing to include. And one tip that I have, if you're looking to include more sulforaphane in your diet, is to chop up your broccoli and then wait 30 minutes or so before eating it, because that generates more of this powerful compound. So I am all about a food first approach. I love to incorporate as much variety and color. And I'm very fascinated by I believe it's either the American Gut Microbiome Project or the Human Gut Microbiome Project, which is this very long study of what we know about the gut microbiome and what is it showing. Are there certain diseases correlated to certain patterns in the gut microbiome? And one thing that they have said is that the most robust microbiomes are people who eat 30 plant varieties or more weekly. And so I'm interested in that. Like, how can we do that? And that might sound like a lot if you're listening, but it's not a lot because spices also count, right? Herbs also count. So if you have a salad with a lot of variety in there and then you add a bunch of herbs and a bunch of spices, that could actually be 30 different species right there. So I do love the conversation around food. I think it's so important. And that's what I studied. So I'm always willing to talk about it.
Yeah, and there's so much research backing the evidence of a plant-forward diet contributing towards improving your longevity as well, when we think about the blue zones, and there's been a lot of talk around that and the fact that those people have had a plant-forward diet and have a really diverse gut microbiome, and quite often centenarians are found to have a really great diverse gut microbiome as well, which they think is attributed to the fact that they've had so many plant foods and it's contributed to their longevity, which is really interesting to see.
Yeah, the only blue zone in America, I believe, and we'll have to fact check this, in Loma Linda here in California, they follow a plant-based diet. So they actually do not incorporate meat in their diet. So that's one interesting thing. The other interesting thing is that they're heavily focused on community. Community is a big part of just their day-to-day life. How can they support each other? How do they meet with their community daily? So it's interesting to see those commonalities in the blue zones for sure.
Yeah, 100%. I think with the focus on having a vegetarian type diet, I kind of err on the side of caution on that one because as a midlife woman, postmenopausal woman, I'm very focused on trying to ensure I have sufficient protein to be able to, prevent sarcopenia and making sure that I maintain muscle as much as I can. And I know there are obviously, plant-based sources of protein as well, but I think for me personally, I struggle to get it if I'm just purely on a vegetarian diet, but it
Same.
is really? Okay.
Well, I grew up vegetarian,
Yeah, right.
I was born into a vegetarian family, and
Yeah.
it was never pressured upon us, but it was just part of our religion, part of our culture. So I was vegetarian for 25 years, vegan for, I don't know, maybe almost 5 years. And I started to see a lot of things pop up for me, brain fog. Like you said, there are ways to do it correctly. I was not doing it correctly. I was eating ultra processed foods, thinking, oh, just because I'm vegan, I'm doing it right. And I was not doing it right. So, the introduction of animal foods into my diet, while I struggled with that, it ultimately was the best thing for my health. But, that's not to say I do think that there are ways to do it if somebody is vegan or vegetarian. You just have to be really careful about the types of things that you include a lot of diversity. I'm all for whatever works for the individual, but I had a very similar experience to you.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. We have to listen to our body, and what works for one person won't work for another. I've got a friend of mine who's been a vegetarian for many, many years, and she has the most amazing gut microbiome, and she's super healthy. She never gets sick because her immunity system is so great. So for her, it clearly works. But I know when I go off the animal protein, I actually don't feel that great. I feel like my body's not supported in the way it needs from a nutritional perspective. And so I find that if I'm eating some, grass finished protein, that tends to support my body a lot better. Look, there's a lot of wellness trends, in the biohacking space and the health and wellness space. And we've really watched the biohacking space in particular explode. What do you think is a wellness trend that women should be really cautious about?
Oh gosh, there's so many. No, I'm just kidding. I honestly think even the things that a lot of people are, more outspoken against these days, like cold plunging and this and that, I'm all for. If it works for you, if it makes you feel good, please go for it. The one thing I will say that I have seen a lot of lately, especially in the younger generations, right? Like Gen Z, is this idea of boundaries is a very interesting conversation. Like self-care, boundaries has come up a lot recently. And I believe if you do have people in your life who are genuinely toxic, narcissistic, whatever it is, you have to create boundaries. You have to limit your time with those people or potentially cut them out of your life if you need to. What I will say is that there has been this movement of if something doesn't fit into my lifestyle, I'm not going to do it. I no longer pick up people from the airport because it's too stressful to go to the airport. I'm not going to that birthday party at 8 p.m. because it interferes with my 12-step skincare routine and wind down routine. One of the best predictors of longevity is genuinely community and
Yeah.
friendship. And I think people are not prioritizing that, right? Like, what do they say? Annoyance is the price you pay for community. You have to do annoying things sometimes if you want the friendship, you want the community. And it's like everybody wants the village, but they don't want to be the villager. And I think young people really are struggling with loneliness. Like, I see they're online more, they're not meeting up in person anymore. And so, anybody who asks me what's the first thing that I recommend when they're wanting to take their health more seriously, it's like, do you have valuable and connected relationships in your life? Do you have people that you go to chat with? Do you have people that you look up to that are your role models? If you want to grow, you need to go where people grow, right? Like go to do the things that you find to be inspiring or aspiring. So I think that this idea of like self-care is really important, but also community is a huge part of that. And I will say, like, in a lot of the ancient cultures and in the blue zones and stuff, community is such a huge part of that. Service is such a huge part of that. And I would like to see that be like looked at as almost a wellness habit that people incorporate. And unfortunately, we're seeing a little bit of the opposite.
Yeah, definitely are, and it's really interesting to see this trend happening about, not going out because you don't want to drink alcohol because you're sober curious now. You don't necessarily need to drink alcohol if you're going out and socializing, right? So
Right.
it's just about really being mindful of what the intention is there. And you're absolutely right that social connection is so vitally important. And I think also stepping outside of your comfort zone, it's a critical part of learning to build resilience as well. Discomfort
Absolutely.
builds resilience, and it's actually good for your longevity because you're learning new things. You're, having the connection with your social network. So these all contribute to your longevity, and studies have shown that. If you could change one thing about the way women's health is taught or practiced, what do you think it would be?
I think that it comes back to I don't like to see when women's experiences are discredited. Even when I think about seed cycling, for example, the thousands of women who have tried everything, they've tried birth control, they've tried changing their lifestyle, like nothing worked, and then seed cycling helped them. And I see so many, especially unfortunately, a lot of men say, oh, seed cycling is bull crap. You don't need to do it. And it's like, that is just a slap in the face to all the women whose lives have genuinely changed. And sure, there's not all this research. I'm proud to say that we conducted the first clinical trial for seed cycling, and I can share more about that. But there's not tons of research, but we can't discredit like N of one experiences or just the experiences of women in general. And I am all about research. I am all about data. I am all about doing things properly. But I feel that there's still so much ignoring women's personal experiences and what worked for them. It's funny, I used to have a boss who's in functional medicine, and he had the best quote. He said, I don't care if it's exercise or exorcism, like whatever works for the patient or the client, I am all about that. And I loved that, right? It's like, we got to take ego out of the equation. What is going to get this person better? And that is truly the only thing that matters. And still, I feel like a lot of people are coming from a place of like, well, no, my way works. No, my way works. And it's like, no, we're not, we shouldn't be thinking about like our way. We should be thinking about the person we're trying to help.
Lose the ego and focus on the service to others and
Yes.
ensuring that
Yes.
they are getting what they need, because so many people are not getting what they need. Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that story. So tell us a little bit more about this clinical study that you guys are doing.
Yeah, it was very exciting. We did a third party clinical trial looking at the effects of seed cycling on PMS symptoms. It was in women between ages 18 and 45. There were 40 women, and they did our seed cycling protocol for 3 months. And we saw significant improvement in every single symptom that we tested, a lot of them within 2 months and all of them within 3 months. So I'm talking 70% or higher breast tenderness, mood changes, libido, quality of life, cramps, digestion, so many different things we tested, and people can read all about that clinical study on our website. I was not surprised to see the results, but I was certainly delighted, and it was a validation of what we have seen. And the cool thing about this study is that we do not know what these women were doing other than seed cycling, right? We did not control for any other aspect in their life. We don't know if they were exercising, not exercising, how they were sleeping, how they were eating. This is just a random group of women that were included. Anybody who is going through anything major was excluded. And if you're pregnant, you're excluded. Above a certain age or under a certain age was excluded. But just looking at symptoms of PMS, there is such a substantial change. And it was really beautiful to kind of get that information out there.
Yeah, and to get the validation to support the anecdotal feedback that you've been receiving from other women, I think that that's pretty powerful, which is great. What's something that you've changed your mind about a women's health over the past few years? We quite often when we come into our own health and wellness journeys, or even coming in as a health coach, you sometimes start off with a perception about something about health, and obviously as science moves and research comes through, new research comes through, new information comes to hand. Is there something that you were very set on in terms of your thinking about it that's significantly changed to today?
Yeah, I grew up with my mom always saying, "Oh, your dad has so much willpower. Your dad is so disciplined. Your dad is like, he shows up the same way every day and he does it." And me kind of thinking that was the bar, that was the standard that I needed to be held to. So for often I did things like the boys, right? I did the 5 a.m. club, I did the keto diet, I did the fasting, and I thought, okay, this is what health and wellness look like. And then I think as I started to surround myself with more women and I started to study nutrition and I started to study hormones, I realized that men and women are not the same. They're different. And we need to honor those differences. And the things that maybe work for them don't necessarily work for me. And there's a reason that maybe on day 10 of my cycle, I can show up and smash my workout. But on day 21 of my cycle, I feel a little bit more lethargic. And that is okay, right? Like we have these wild fluctuations in our hormones that happen. And we need to honor that. And that's not to say you need to change what you're doing every single week. You could follow the same set of principles, every single day. But if you don't show up the same exact way every single day, that is okay. That is what being a woman is.
What's the question that women are asking you most often when it comes to their hormones or their cycles right now?
Gosh, I think the question that a lot of women who are especially not in this space ask me is, what supplement should I be taking? Right? Like, what supplement should I take that will make me just feel better? And I think the question they maybe are trying to ask is like, how do I not feel like crap? Or how do I feel better? And it's so tricky because it really does come down to the basics, but the basics are not easy. If they were easy, everyone would be doing them and we wouldn't be dealing with a chronic disease epidemic that we're currently dealing with. And I would love to have the time to sit down with each of them and talk to them about their individual challenges and how that can be supported. And are they doing the basics? Are they getting enough sleep? Especially in my age group, we're all young moms. We all have moms of very young children. I mean, sleep is hard to come by, right? And so a lot of women, they don't give themselves grace like for this particular period of life or a lot of different particular periods of life. But a lot of the young moms that I talk to are like, I have low energy and what supplement can make me feel better? What supplement can give me more energy? And it's like, hey, also honor the fact that you're not sleeping well. You're waking up several times at night because you have to feed your baby or your baby is sick or, you're waking up early with them and you're trying to cook for your family and you're trying to be a working mom. And I feel for those women because I'm in that exact same stage. So I completely get it.
Yeah, I've been there. And one thing that I learned after having my 3 children is that I became a very light sleeper, and it took me years to undo that pattern. And so I've had to focus really quite strongly on learning to sleep better and get quality sleep as well. And that required me to very much focus on a sleep routine. But that's obviously, different stages in life as a woman and like for yourself and for the other women that you were referring to, that if you've got younger children, it's very difficult to be able to prioritize your sleep when you've got young kids. But there are ways to
Absolutely.
try to do that. Get support
I
of your
know.
network, right? Your family can maybe look after the baby for a little while or
Mhm. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the day where I can learn to sleep again. So it's nice to hear from somebody who's gone through it because, it's true. It changes your sleep. All of a sudden, I'm a light sleeper. I hear phantom cries, right? Like
Yeah.
your nervous system changes because you're looking out for your babies, and that serves its purpose. But gosh, even just sleep alone, right? The most underrated pillar of health and wellness. Even just like learning to sleep again can be life changing.
Yeah, completely agree. It's the number one biohack everybody should be focusing on. People should be prioritizing the sleep because if they haven't got that right, then nothing else that they try to implement is going to really improve their health. They need to be ensuring that they get that regenerative sleep. If every woman listening today is looking for that one takeaway lesson, what would it be in your view?
I think that I would say so often we make decisions as women, especially about our bodies or what diet we need to go on or what weight we need to lose from a place of fear or judgment or shame. And I don't really think for the most part that you can make good, valid decisions when you're in that state. I mean, fear serves its purpose, but from judgment and shame. So I always tell women start when you can from a place of joy. And I love what Tony Robbins says. He says, change your state. So sometimes when you're feeling judged or shamed or fearful or whatever it is, what can you do to change your state? Do you need to call up a friend? Do you need to just hydrate? Do you need to eat something? Right? We didn't even get into talking about the role of blood sugar imbalances and PMS. That's a huge thing, and blood sugar imbalances in general, and just everything. What do you actually need in that moment? And I think that anytime that I return to a place of joy, even when I think about my children, they don't listen to me if I'm, yelling or talking to them or talking down to them. But when I'm coming to them in a joyful and playful way, that is when we get things done. That is when they listen to me. That is when we move forward as a family. And I think the same thing applies for us. There is not enough joy in the world. And I am all about women doing joyful things every single day to come back to that place. I think it is like one of the highest states that you can be in. So just think about what brings you joy and make time for that.
And it is also a biohack as well, which can contribute to your longevity. So
There you
absolutely
go.
get some more joy in your life, people. Hey, Kai,
Yes.
it's been an absolute delight chatting to you today. Thank you so much for educating us on seed cycling. If people would like to get in touch with you on social, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Definitely check out our Instagram. It's at Beeya Wellness. That's Beeya Wellness. It is such a party over there. We have amazing recipes. We talk about food as medicine. We talk about hormonal hacks. It's such a cool place to be. We try to respond to every DM. If you want to reach out to me directly, you can just my first and last name, Kaya Purohit at Instagram. And I'm always chatting with people on there and would be happy to chat with anyone.
Sounds like fun. Thanks so much, Kaya.
Mhm. Thank you so much.
Well, that's a wrap for today's podcast. Thank you for tuning in. And if you'd like to learn more about biohacking, go ahead and sign up on my website at www.biohack-her.com to get a free copy of my 5 top biohacks to get you kick-started. While you're there, you can also check out my blog page for more tips on biohacking. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, you can do so on Apple, Spotify, and Google Play. Let us know if there's anyone you'd like us to talk to in particular, and we'll endeavour to get them on the podcast. Until next time, remember to live well longer.